Survivor Outdoor is coming to you live from Carlsbad, California. And we want you to know that Soul Survivor Outdoor is an outdoor adventure company, and we are focused on active duty military, a very unique place for us to be able to do that with 18 to 20 somethings typically out doing outdoor adventure and bringing the gospel and putting it front and center with them as a foundation for living. And again, it's all about the active duty service member. We've got all kinds of volunteers, including veterans. So if you're interested in volunteering with us, reach out. We'd love to have that happen. I'm here with area directors from around the country, and it's a unique privilege to be able to do that. And this topic of discussion this morning is discipleship. What does that mean? What does the journey of faith mean, right? Like, we get that all the time. Where do we fit into that equation? And so I say spark a lot. We're a spark to ignite a hunger or a thirst for faith. And I want to get your opinions on this and talk about everything from, chaplain partnerships to the local church and all that kind of stuff. So, Brandy, why don't you initiate this part of the conversation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the spark analogy is really good because Soul Survivor comes in at a place we really do catch folks flat-footed. It's like, hey, we're going to go to an event. What is this going to be? Fortunately, we do things during the work week. So people like to come out and do adventurous things, do unit activities during the week instead of stealing their weekends.
Right.
And we'll hear our volunteers say, hey, there was a huge change from the beginning of the event to the end of the event. There was really, things kind of lit up. And we see it in a lot of different ways. First is just doing outdoor adventure kind of gives you a wake-up call.
Right.
Could be as rude as jumping out of an airplane and having wind hit your face, or going on a whitewater rafting trip, or shooting, or whatever we do. That really does make you think differently, and it does kind of wake you up, gives you that jolt. Right. All the way through the event, we've got volunteers who are sharing their story or listening to stories one-on-one and then sharing their stories. Hey, I've kind of been there with you, especially our veterans. But even people talking about their outside world. Hey, this is what I see you guys doing. Tell me a little bit more about what you do at in your role in the Army or in the Marine Corps or wherever you're at. And then the crux of it hits when we have lunch, and then we do the spiritual fitness, spiritual resilience talk, and you get to hear typically a former service member or somebody who's close to the service tell their story, their trajectory of, hey, here's where I was, here's where I put my identity, here was a crisis I went through, and it's captivating. You hear these stories, and some of the ones that I've heard of our guest speakers, it's just fascinating to hear where they've been, and then how they had a cataclysmic event that really shifted where they put their identity, where they put their foundation, and how Christ turned things around and gave them that positive trajectory and a place to land. And at the end of the event, you've gone from somebody who really came in flat-footed, like, hey, here's another mandatory fun event. It might be good, it might not be, to people who are networking. You see the people within the unit and outside into our volunteers. There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of smiles, whole different demeanor when you come out of the event. And I think what's in it for the commander is, hopefully, as we take that spark and it kind of lights up during an event, is they're having service members come back that are more resilient. They have service members that are coming back saying, hey, I now see other ways that I can deal with some of these issues, large and small, that I'm confronting in life, whether it's in my military role, in these multiple deployments that I'm doing with my family. It's really cool to see that. So it really does generate from that very first spark of showing up and starting to meet folks all the way through sending folks back to their unit.
Yeah. So how do you answer, Tony? How do somebody says, hey, all right, maybe I'm the service member and I wanted to begin a relationship with Christ today. What are next steps for me? What would I do? Where do I go? How would you answer that?
Well, hopefully during the conversations, they've engaged with somebody who is a new acquaintance, right? Somebody for them to carry on in fellowship with. And they also have an amazing chaplain. I know most of my chaplains are just phenomenal. And that's a spark that we've lit for that chaplain to turn into a flame, right? And I've seen this so many times in my events where I have a soldier, Marine, that comes out there and, kind of sits in the back a little bit. And by the end of the event, they're like, can I come out more? I'll see the same person come back at a second event. And I'm like, hey, you came out a second time. He goes, yeah, I want to like do this with you.
That's right.
And you just see this person has made a complete change. And now they want to carry a torch.
Mm.
And they want to go around and they want to be enabled to light that spark in their fellow soldiers, their fellow Marines. And that's an amazing thing to watch. And that's what we're doing. We're impacting with a tiny spark. That's all it takes
Mm-hmm.
to have a burning fire.
Yeah. So, I know you've mentioned the local church, Richard, and just same question really is, what are the next steps? And we have people that support what we do, and they think, is it enough? Is it enough to get them started on an interest in this? But there's so much more. Does Soul Survivor take the next steps? What are the next steps? And so I know you have some very distinct thoughts on that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate what Tony said about it's like with the chaplain, because we need the chaplains. We need the local churches because our time that we have with Soul Survivor Outdoors to start that spark, to get that message out there from there needs to be carried forward. So we have the resources, with the QR codes that is provided with Soul Survivor Outdoor on there. We have the individuals even laying out business cards with the phone number, email address, and say, hey, contact me. But we've heard so many stories, and personally, even it's like in Poland or in the other events, where the chaplains are coming back saying, man, you have opened up doors for me, that these conversations already started. And so we need to be able to have this partnership because the local church and the chaplain can go further than what we can.
Right.
Because our time with them, say a 4-hour event, or if that one individual comes back because of that hunger that they're having for this type of event, they come back a second time. But we need the chaplains be able to continue these conversations. We need the local churches when they come out to volunteer to be able to identify and start those relationships with them, because that's where the discipleship piece comes into. With a 4-hour event, 1 hour Sunday school, while good, while important, still not enough. I mean, we need relationships to be able to walk with people. Because even a young soldier at the last event when we were skydiving, he had questions from Genesis chapter 1 between verses 2 and 3. And so we're sitting there and it's like, this is a deeper question than what I can get into right now, but I want to have this conversation.
Yes.
And so that's exciting to be able to see that there are some serious questions that our soldiers are having. They need the local church. We need the chaplains because what we can provide for them in bringing the units together and out to these areas and the reach and the impact, most churches cannot. Right. Even when it comes to the chaplains, they cannot have this type of impact by what we provide with outdoor event and bringing the gospel as clearly as we do.
Well, and there's a reason why God says it's his family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You would hope that every family member is not exactly the same. I mean, sometimes we get in disagreements or have issues with each other because we're not exactly the same.
It's the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 12. It's like we are a body, and there's so many different parts of the body that even things we don't see that are so vital.
Right.
We all make up that body that Christ is doing on there. So yeah, it's just not one. It's all of it. It takes all of us.
Right. And so it becomes a community and we're experiencing that when we're in North Carolina and we have a local church, or in Tennessee where your church is involved, or other churches within Clarksville are coming, and the volunteers are coming from a number of different Christian churches who are there to invite people on our tables. We've got things that have been donated by different organizations, from Mighty Oaks to what have you. And so that stuff is there so that they can pick up a Bible and start reading it, where there's an opportunity to engage with another person or volunteer, where you can invite them to First Baptist Clarksville. All of that is part of that dynamic. And we tend to think that it's just, SSO is just doing this little event and then that's it. And it's like, no, we have local partners, we have regional partners, we have our stuff on our website. There's just all kinds of different ways for people to be connected. And there is a part of the individual where they have to take some of this on their own and say, just like if I had a gym membership, I don't just sign up for the gym membership and then I never go. I mean, a lot of people do that at Christmas or New Year's, but the ideal would be, I say, hey, I really want to be part of this, and I'm a seed that the seed went in, and I want to be, I want to know God better. And where would I connect to a local church? And we have great chaplains like Ed Helm at Fort Liberty, who, you said, these conversations weren't taking place before. So he's having that conversation. He can point him to a church. He can do the discipleship, the really kind of knee to knee, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about Genesis 1 and really dive into that. And so, all of these things make up the entirety of how this is working. And so our role is super important because these service members typically aren't going to church. Now they show up at an event. Now we kind of whet their appetite, or maybe they said, yeah, I want that. Right. I want to know Jesus. What's next? And we can point them.
But now they have a relationship with a volunteer that went and did the event with them, rode horses with them, or did the shotguns with the sporting clays. Now they have a relationship. So when they do show up,
that's right.
Yeah, they're connected.
Yeah. What's going on in Texas in this area? I know that one of the guys has given us a devotion that sits on every table. Now those devotions are across the country because of a connection we have in Texas.
Yeah, the Chip and Joanna Gaines have donated those Jesus Calling devotions.
Her dad, yeah. Jerry, yeah.
And it's amazing because I have a lot of the soldiers after the event come up, want to talk about just the Jesus Calling. What I point them to is starting your day off. If you start it off in Scripture, that's your guiding light for the rest of the day.
It's good.
You have your foundation and you're moving forward from a point with God instead of, those mornings when you just wake up and from the get-go, you're having a bad day. Well, let's make a change there. And I think that a lot of this and the discipleship is kind of like the small groups that you have at your church and getting somebody towards those small groups, towards that fellowship with one another. I think we talked about fellowship before and its importance. And I think through the event, we're illustrating what that fellowship is, that feeling that you get when you're at the event. And they're going to want to keep that feeling. And the best place to keep it is, of course, small group or like-minded individuals as we are sitting around and having these just discussions about the importance of our identity, of discipleship, and what's really important in this life.
And so it's the cumulative whole. So, we keep coming back to the local church, cannot be overstressed. And we have so many great church partners, especially as we continue to grow in these areas and people walking out their faith in meaningful ways, reading their Bible every day, getting, kind of setting their compass right in the morning, other spiritual prayer, meditation on God's word and so forth. And so here we are today talking about this, and it's just one piece of it. And then even interestingly enough, we still have, we're watering or planting or harvesting, and it's all happening. And then those connections are coming together as God's family. And so, I'm glad we got to talk about this today because it's just so important for everybody to know that, we have a specific role in this.
That's right.
And God has very clearly called us to speak life into the lives of active duty service members who are young people who are typically not hearing about God. Various research out there has said they're living in spiritual darkness and they don't know this message, and we're delivering it to them. And then we're giving those connections and those resources to walk out their faith in meaningful ways. And we don't even know where that ultimately lands because God's in charge of the whole thing. And so thanks, guys, for having this conversation. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about this. And I know we're going to talk more about it.
Thank you.
At our weekly meetings and things of that nature, because it's so core to helping these folks live their life of faith going forward from what we do at Soul Survivor Outdoor Event. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.